I think one of the most frustrating things in business is collecting monies owed to you. You know, customers are very quick with the deposit, but when it comes to paying the money in the back end, it gets very tricky. In light of this, I think we should talk about debt collection. One of the most common requests that I get in Njozela Legal is debt collection requests. Debt collection is a process of pursuing payments owed to you by a debtor. For those that didn't do accounting, a debtor is just that bantola that owes you money. So let's say you have a service-based business in which you require a deposit before you start your work, or you sell a product where several payments need to be paid before the conclusion of the transaction. If you're one of these people, you need to know that when you start your work, when you complete your work rather, that you'll get paid by this debtor. You need to know that either you're going to get paid, and if for whatever instance this person doesn't pay you, that you'll have action in order to pursue this person. So if you're dealing with a lot of money, or you're dealing with a transaction in which several payments or a long-term payment plan will come into effect, it's important to know whether or not this person will be able to make these payments throughout the payment plan. This can be done through a credit check. However, if you're still unsure of whether or not the debtor will be able to make payments, I think it's very important that you look into a surety agreement. A surety agreement is an agreement where a person or entity assumes joint liability for the debt alongside with the principal debtor. So basically the person signs on to be liable just as the principal debtor is liable. When it comes to surety agreements, I've seen so many mistakes. I've seen people write surety agreements and contracts. I've seen people draft surety agreements incorrectly. I mean, if you a lawyer like me, you know the frustration of trying to pursue a co-principal debtor with a flawed surety agreement. So I think it's very important that you speak to a lawyer before you draft a surety agreement, or before you get a customer to sign a surety agreement. Needless to say, if you are entering into agreement where there is a lot of money involved, or there's a lot of payments involved throughout the transaction, the original agreement needs to be airtight. And again, you need to speak to a lawyer to ensure that the agreement that you're using is enforceable, and that you'd be able to claim your monies in the event that the debtor does not pay. However, if we're being honest with ourselves, there are instances where a contract does not need to be involved, or it's not possible that you can get the customer to draft the contract, but you're still dealing in an instance where a deposit is being paid, services are being rendered, and you're waiting on the back end of the payments of the full amount, and you're wanting to make sure that you will have an enforceable action if in the event the customer doesn't pay. I think in this instance, it's very important to consult a lawyer. There's various things that you can do. If you're trading online, it's very important that your terms and conditions online are very clear, that they make provisions for this. You know, there's various ways and people can enter into contracts online without physically signing that contract. You know, you would find that sometimes when you click on terms and conditions that you've entered into an agreement with the service provider already, where all those provisions are listed. So in the event that you do not pay in time, that they'll be able to use that contract that you have clicked on when you're procuring those services. In the event that it's on a face-to-face instance, or you engage your customers online via email, there are certain provisions or emails that you can make sure sorry about that, my throat's a little sore. But there are provisions that you can put in your email or in your communication with the debtor to ensure that the contract or the agreement that you're entering into is enforceable. Remember, oral agreements are enforceable, but there is corroboration that is generally required in order to prove the oral agreement. So it's very important that you have some written communication, whether it be a receipt or written communication that you have with the debtor, in order to enforce the agreements that you've entered into. Now the debt collection side, it's very important that you speak to someone that's very knowledgeable about debt collections before you start that process. because certain contracts require certain steps before you enforce the debt collection process. It's very important for you to know that if you're entering into a credit agreement or an incidental credit agreement, that there's certain letters that need to be sent and notices that have to be sent prior to you pursuing that person pursuant to the agreements that they've defaulted on. There's also instances where certain types of alternative dispute resolution has to come into play prior to you pursuing the person in a court of law, and it's very important that you know about this and that you pursue this. Debt collection, a debtor has rights, as much as you have rights too, and it's very important that you seek legal or professional advice prior to pursuing the person to ensure that you do not infringe upon their rights whilst you trying to obtain the monies owed to you too. So with regards to debt collection, there is a lot to know, and I try to make it a common practice to not give strict legal advice, but rather to give people hints and I guess practical advice on how to go about these matters. If you want to know more about debt collection, or if you want to speak to me about a certain instance that you do have, you can tap into my email address. It should be popping up right now. Hopefully, if I get this right. Am I getting this right? or alternatively, you can hop into my website, which is www.njozelalegal.co.za, and you can look at the services that I provide there too. Debt collection is a frustrating, or can be a frustrating process, but in the right hands, you can ensure that you can get your money back. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, fagis panela, boy.